recent years, the Western billionaire class have found a new interest in space and space exploration, which seem to have died out in the West. Now the voyages into the Great Void are not the stuff of patriotism or manifest destiny, but something more like a status symbol. The space trip has become the equivalent of the yacht or the Caribbean island. There's an odd, half-hearted social media campaign to garner interest among the masses, but as with so much else these days, we're not really involved or interested or asked for any feedback. It's a sign of the times that far more people are more interested in Elon Musk buying Twitter than they are with his X projects and his plan to travel to Mars by 2029, and then beyond that, colonize the wider galaxy, supposedly. In fact, many people don't even take Musk's plans to explore space seriously at all. They'll say it's a cynical tax avoidance scheme, or it's entangled with the deep state, or it's just a way to roll out the technology of the fourth industrial revolution and the digital agenda. Space exploration in the 2020s smacks far more of the super rich playing with new toys that could be turned on the rest of us than it does of boldly going where no man has gone before. And yet Musk himself adopts the airs of a poetic Faustian figure who laments that we as a civilization turned away from space and, as Star Trek's Q put it, crawled back under our beds. Musk said we used to know how to get to the moon, but we forgot. But did we really forget? Or did we not just lose our nerve and will? It begs the question, why did our horizon shrink? These existential questions raised by the lack of enthusiasm over modern space exploration tell us more than viewing it as a pastime of the super wealthy. Symbolically, though, it's hard not to see the gulf between ourselves and the billionaire class who are separating themselves from the rest of us. Elon Musk seems in many ways to be a character from a bygone age, the chancer who invests in a mission to explore the Northwest Passage, or an explorer like Scott of the Antarctic who carries with him an insatiable drive to conquer empty spaces. But I'll take Musk at his word because it's more interesting and revealing. Musk is the richest man alive and he can command vast resources for his endeavours. I don't doubt for a second that he has the technology or that he can develop it. But in all of this, an older question such men have faced before re-emerges, and the question is, why? When English mountaineer George Mallory was asked why he wanted to climb Mount Everest, Mallory summed up perfectly an old Northern European sentiment by answering, because it's there. In other words, there's no rational explanation for risking your life by climbing the highest mountain on Earth. There's no logical or even financial incentive. In the end, it's just because it's there, because all challenges and unconquerable spaces need to be overcome by the insatiable drive of Western man. A lofty peak, an empty ocean, a rolling desert, or the sky itself exist as snubs and struggles that need to be met. I don't doubt for a second that Elon Musk has enjoyed replying to a reporter because it is there when asked why he has this odd obsession with Mars. But here we run into a curious paradox. Western man's yearning to explore is a primal, even a metaphysical condition, almost a spiritual quest. At root, it's life-affirming, a simple joy at living and zest for life and adventure, but it cannot be rationalised or reduced to data. I was recently watching a documentary on the English poet, painter and thinker William Blake. Blake was heavily critical of the Enlightenment and scientific materialism, which he regarded as myopic and sterile. In Blake's depiction of Isaac Newton, we see this perfectly encapsulated. Newton, in Blake's view, was the quintessential scientific materialist. In Blake's painting, Newton has his head buried in calculations and his compass. But when we look closer, we see that Newton is actually on the ocean floor and sitting on a coral covered in attractive algae. As a deeply religious and spiritual man who believed in higher planes of understanding and imagination and God, Blake is turning the tables because Newton is so wrapped up in his calculations he's completely oblivious to the wider world, to where he actually is, or its beauty and its mystery. Isaac Newton is a true giant of science. It could be argued one of the architects of the modern world, paving the way for the scientific, machine-like approach of prioritizing rationalism, calculation and causality. Newton won. The poets and painters like Blake, who warned that this would eclipse or hide the true nature of man and the world, lost. The world we have today is built almost entirely on science. Newton explained how gravity worked, how to splinter light, and establish the basis for mechanics. Newton could never have foreseen it, but one day his heirs would be talking like this.
I want to talk to you today about the future of our species, and really the future of life. We are probably one of the last generations of Homo sapiens. Within a century or two, Earth will be dominated by entities that are more different from us than we are different from Neanderthals or from chimpanzees. Because in the coming generations, we will learn how to engineer bodies and brains and minds. These will be the main products of the economy, of the 21st century economy. Not textiles and vehicles and weapons, but bodies and brains and minds.
Most of us normal people find the transhuman agenda to be repulsive, dystopian and hellish. But when we ask why that is, why do we find it horrifying, most of us would argue that it's unnatural. We will begin casting around looking for arguments based on an innate beauty to life which should not be meddled with. We imagine freakish creations which are, as he described, alien to us. But fundamentally it's because we think life is more than the sum of its parts, more than mathematics and data. In other words, we're trying to find the coral and seabed in Blake's painting. We're trying to refine wonder and metaphysical ways to connect with living and being, but everywhere we look, the cold steel doors block the path, or we're confused and exhausted by the algorithm, regulation and mechanical processes. The technological society is robbing us of what it is to be human. Indeed, as Harari admits, these technocrats are at war with the human form itself, and openly, and Elon Musk is pioneering it. He doesn't even want you to drive your own car. Just sit back and allow the AI to have agency while you sit passive like a baby in a pram being wheeled about. It seems to me we're reaching an event horizon that we're going to have to decide which direction we're going in. The billionaire class seem to be hell-bent on enslaving and twisting humanity, or at least the Western people, into something that we are not, into a chipped and, as they say, useless slave class of dependents who are monitored and mined for data, cajoled into eating synthetic meats, and reduced to a plebeian peasant caste of disposable and interchangeable widgets who never knew privacy, never knew life beyond the bright screen which they stare at all day. And yet this bovine biomass of consumers are expected to understand the magnitude of travelling across the solar system. Elon Musk claims he wants to travel to Mars, colonize it, and then he'd be happy to die there. It's a grand poetic vision, and I can appreciate it. I get it. It speaks to a need to always chase the next horizon. It's a primordial drive within Western man. But the question is, in what way does our society facilitate it in any way? In fact, the Neuralinks march toward automation, the creation of a universal man, and the literal hacking of humans chops it off at the knees. To ask the question again, why? Why go to Mars in the first place, let alone try and colonize it? And who is to colonize it? The same people who tremble behind masks and were locked in their homes for a year to avoid even the remotest risk? Why not just, for a fraction of the cost and risk, recreate Mars within cyberspace, gather the data and recreate every rock and dune and mountain? On the one hand, we're told that faking everything from meat to reality via technology acts as a perfect replica for the original. Why go hiking across Iceland when you can sit at home and hook yourself up to the metaverse? And on the other hand, technology is supposed to usher in a new dawn of adventure and fulfillment and discovery and the unknown. There's the transhuman inner technology of biodata and control grids and twisting DNA sequences, and then there's the outer technology, wherein technology is in service to our own will and propels us on forever into eternity. Musk, I think, would argue in favour of some sort of synthesis. But this is why I do not think he will ever get to Mars. He won't get to Mars for the same reason Isaac Newton could not see his surroundings in Blake's painting. The mechanistic and data-driven obsession being forced on the populace blinds man to wonder, and when he is blinded to wonder, he no longer has the capacity to answer the fundamental question posed to George Mallory. Why? I suppose the argument could be made that we need to settle on another planet so that we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket on Earth. But this just kicks the can down the road and begs another question. Is a genetically modified slave class with no free will, privacy, or even the ability to make the smallest decisions about their lives even worth saving? The elite class are breeding a terrified and neo-peasantry, not explorers and hardy souls ready to dive enthusiastically into the void. We have become Nietzsche's last men, in which he wrote, quote, "Alas, there comes the time when man will no longer give birth to a star. Alas, there comes the time of the most despicable man, who can no longer despise himself. Lo, I show you the last man. What is love? What is creation? What is longing? What is a star?" So asks the last man, and blinks. The earth has become small, and on it hops the last man, who makes everything small. His species is ineradicable as the flea. The last man lives longest. We have discovered happiness, say the last man, and they blink. End quote. I can imagine an elderly Elon Musk standing beside two spaceships the size of skyscrapers, but the ships stand empty, and even with all of his wealth and enthusiasm, he struggles to fill the slots because nobody wants to go. In fact, most people will think he's insane for trying, and the reason will be because nobody can answer the question, why climb the mountain? They know that Mars is there, they just don't care, and anyway, they've already been to the digital version 10 times. It was never humanity's destiny, and I say humanity in quotes, to conquer the 33 million miles to Mars, or break through Europa's ice fields and use aquatic submarines to explore its ocean. That resides only within the group who built the Gothic cathedral, looked out on the Atlantic obsessively wondering what lay on the other side and who had to reach the South Pole for no reason than the simple fact that it was there. The Star Trek vision of man is false on two counts. First, that a world under a single political entity would be more concerned with pacifying, controlling and sedating the masses than enacting grand schemes to bring technocratic socialism to the cosmos. Secondly, a society in which all material wants are satiated and all struggle removed does not garner a spirit of discovery, but a dysgenic biomass being drip-fed pulp and entertained via screens and algorithmic stimulation. Yet even now, writing this script to describe the society that could nurture the spirit and propel us to the stars risks me being censored by the very forces that are supposed to be leading us into the bright techno future of tomorrow. It's a lie. The technology is not taking us to the rings of Saturn. It's confining us to our sofas and reducing us to battery hens. People often say we need a positive vision, a dream of the future that can be realised. And in a sense, a mission to Mars or beyond is that. It fits with the historic trajectory of Western man. A higher vision and purpose that was always our destiny idea before it all went to hell. We look at the stunning Gothic spires built the best part of a millennia ago and compare it with the space shuttle on its launcher. We see the similarity because both are expressions of a metaphysical force working through us. They are both based on an idea, the idea to leave the earth and traverse the heavens, but it belongs to us and not others. And if elites want to flirt with these impulses and primal conditions, then they have to understand where they originate, and that right now the people and civilization who ushered it forth are being suffocated and reduced to battery hens. So yes, let's colonize Mars. Let us fulfill our destiny. But first there's going to have to be one hell of a restoration. The West and its peoples will have to be decoupled from fanciful notions of global humanity and win the last battle, the battle against our own machine. But it goes without saying that such grand visions would mean an outward, strong and self-confident people. It would mean the creation of a grand meta-narrative which looked forward and not inward, an atomised consciousness lost in digital space. It would mean the restoration of healthy societal structures and stable demographics. In short, it would mean the opposite of what we have now. And that's a conversation that I'd like to see take place. I'll catch you later, folks.